Welcome to the new season of the Live Your Spa Life show. The Spa in Spa Life stands for Seek Power Always, that divine power within you to do what you're here to do. The theme for this season is Freedom Fighter. Amazing people like you share ways to ensure your freedom physically, financially, spiritually, and in your relationships to create a world-class life. In these times of uncertainty, it's time for you to move past the distractions and start trusting yourself more through your God-given knowingness. No one truly knows better what's best for you than you. In this season, you'll have plenty of examples of people choosing their best life and giving a voice of freedom to those who are also looking to have their best life. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us and being part of the Live Your Spa Life conversation. With us today is Susan Munsey, the founder and director of programs of GenerateHope, a comprehensive and uniquely designed long-term recovery program for women who've been sex trafficked. Susan is a leader with the San Diego Regional Human Trafficking Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children Advisory Council. She's also involved in many other trafficking-related education services, groups, and activities in San Diego. Susan holds a master's degree in social work from Smith College in Massachusetts and is licensed in California as a clinical social worker. Susan is also a lived experience expert, having been trafficked herself at 15 years of age. She was able to overcome this setback through education, psychotherapy, and faith, and now uses the healing she received to help others heal from a similar experiences. Susan, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's so wonderful to be here.
I would love to just jump in about, when people think of trafficking, they think of other countries, they think in other areas. They don't necessarily look in their own backyard and maybe haven't personally experienced it. Just to kind of set the stage, how prevalent would you say trafficking is in San Diego?
Well, it's very prevalent. It is we are one of the top cities in the nation for sex trafficking, and that includes children and adults, with the average age of entry being about 15 years old, depending on the study that you look at. And a lot of times people think that we have a lot of trafficking because we're close to the border. But the truth is, the people that are being trafficked are our own children. They're all, well, in 13 years, we've had one woman from Mexico. The rest of them are US nationals. And they're being sometimes moved about the state or the country, and sometimes just trafficked in one city. We have a lot of trafficking because we have a military presence. We have a lot of vacationers, and we also have people coming into town for conferences and things. And people sometimes behave differently when they're not in their own city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people don't necessarily look at that there's a lot of transitory, and we're a hub for travel, one of the top spots for people to go, and people with military, obviously they're coming in and going in and of that area. So are you saying that people kind of are more relaxed in their atmosphere, and they're maybe not as aware of those kind of situations? And are they taken more by strangers or by people they know?
Well, it is typically what we call boyfriending. And so it's a younger girl and an older guy who's done this before, knows the routine, and he will boyfriend her. In other words, let her believe that he is interested in her as a girlfriend. And he will love bomb in the beginning, which is buying her lots of things, taking her out to eat. And it might just be McDonald's, but that may be a treat for her. He's buying her clothes. But the thing is, he's actually prepping her to be trafficked.
Yeah. I know a lot of times that parents don't want to talk to their children because they feel like maybe they're going to scare them, or they're not sure. At what age do you start having a conversation, and how do you have it in a way that it's preventative versus living in this big, scary world? How are you helping people just approach the subject in general?
Well, there are some trainings that are going on in middle school and high school. I say some because the trainers have to be invited in. It's not a part of the curriculum. But also, just as far as parents talking with their children about this, it is very important. Depending on the maturity level of your child, maybe even as early as the 6th grade, but definitely in middle school and high school. And it's just letting them know to be wary of these things possibly happening. Anytime a person, child, or adult goes on the internet, then they are vulnerable. The traffickers do a lot of recruiting online. They do recruiting at parties. They do recruiting at the malls. Anywhere where young people might hang out, the traffickers are there looking for a victim. And they look for those vulnerabilities. And that may be a low sense of self-esteem. It may be somebody who's run away from home or is homeless. Some kind of vulnerability that's there.
As I've spoken, I mean, a lot of people know my background as a San Diego police officer, and I talk to a lot of people who have moved, through the system and in a lot of different ways. People who've recovered from these type of situations, and one of the things that have come up too is people that have been trafficked within their family.
Yes.
How often do you see that as something that comes up for them?
We're seeing that a lot more frequently lately. I would say 30 to 50%, just, depending on, the day or the month. There are a lot of times where the families are involved with gangs, drugs, and trafficking. And, they say that you can sell a gun or a weapon or drugs once, but the market for, if you will, for trafficking victims is much more lucrative. They can be sold over and over and over again. And not only that, but the charges and the penalties are lower than they are for trafficking weapons or drugs.
Right, right. So, for those of us who've come from, families that we know we can turn to them and we have that trust based in, a lot of times those that are trafficked within their family, they were groomed and brought up that way, and they see that as a way of life, and they don't see that it's something that is, quote, wrong, or, this is their life, this is their reality of what love looks like, and what they've experienced themselves. So a lot of times people don't even recognize that they are being trafficked, right? That they're in a lifestyle that they have no idea that there's another way to live. How can we help people in just having that education, and where does a child go when they realize, hey, this is not the norm, and they can't turn to their family, but yet they're still a minor? What are their options?
Mhm. That's a really good question. And I think that at some age, they recognize that this is not what's happening with my other friends. Oftentimes also there is abuse in their background, whether that be sexual, physical, or emotional, kind of neglect situations. And where they can go, certainly they can contact us at Generate Hope. The National Trafficking Sheltered Alliance is a wonderful resource. They can refer people all over the country into programs that'll help them heal. And that's shelteredalliance.org.
Mhm.
There's also Rescue America, and they can come in and rescue women out of the situation. This does happen to men and boys as well. I typically talk about women because that's what we work with, and that's the a larger portion of the picture. You know, I think a lot of times people are afraid to go to the police, but that certainly is an option. And then there is the national hotline for sex trafficking or for trafficking in general.
Mhm.
Uh, I tend to shy away from that a little bit because sometimes the hold times are very long, and that's not ideal for a survivor who is in the situation.
Right. So if somebody's in a situation and they need immediate attention, what's the number one go-to for them?
Uh, I would say Rescue America. They can certainly contact Generate Hope. They can go on our website. There's a link for that, and we can be in contact with them. And if not us, we can refer them to a program that would fit for their unique set of circumstances.
Got it. Got it. So let's talk a little bit about, some of the things that we talk about here is, when people have disempowering experiences, how it affects them and how they get to the other side. It's rare for people to be able to have a conversation with someone who's actually experienced trafficking and how they've moved through that to the other side. For yourself, I mean, I'm sure you didn't grow up going, I'm going to be someone who's going to be trafficked, right? And so can you explain a little bit about, because I think one of the biggest questions people ask me is how did that happen? Like, how do they not see it? And then once they're in it, like there's a whole mental aspect of what goes on. Can you just share a little bit about like what your journey was like and when you actually recognized that, hey, something is going on here, and what were the steps that you were able to get out?
Right. Well, first up, I'll say that there is a lot of trauma bonding, and that really is where the traffickers give enough that looks like love up until the point of actually being trafficked. There's usually a request. I'm having a tough time financially in some way or another. And if you could just do this once, it'll help us get through. I love you, babe. This is for us, kind of we're going to live happily ever after kind of picture. And people
Right.
don't understand why would they stay? They're not chained to a bed, but it's psychological chains.
Yes.
So that's a really important thing, I think, to recognize up front. There's a lot of brainwashing. So for instance, once they've been trafficked, then the physical violations come into play. And that may be beatings, it's certainly sexual abuse, any kind of harsh treatment that's going to make them afraid of the trafficker and feel that they need to stay in line with the trafficker. There's brainwashing that it's you and me against the world. The police are not going to help you. You're just the one who's going to be arrested. If we get stopped, here's what you say, and so on. Excuse me. So for me, I was a vulnerable youth. I was 15, and I had some difficulties in my adolescence. I was not sexually abused, but I was in a neglectful situation. And so I left home and I ran away. And that's one of the big vulnerabilities. And also that I had low self-esteem. So met this guy, good looking, charming. This was really my first boyfriend. And, or at least I thought he was my boyfriend.
Right.
And he did the love bombing. And just really groomed me. And think about how a pedophile grooms their victims. And it's very similar with sex trafficking. And so, the same sort of situation happened. It was just supposed to be the one time. And, I allowed myself to be trafficked. I didn't think I could survive without him. And I wanted to do anything I could do to keep him in my life. And in 13 years at Generate Hope, it's the same story I've heard over and over and over again with the women that we work with, maybe with, minor variations in the story.
Right.
Then, came the physical violence and just intimidation and so on. So I was very blessed to be arrested. And I did not think that was a blessing at the time,
Right.
but it was a blessing because it gave me time away from my trafficker. So I could kind of get my head back together. I could think about what was happening. And I could just question myself on the behaviors of this boyfriend and recognize that this is not a love relationship. And so I was able to get out in that way. Unfortunately, at the time, there were no services for survivors of sex trafficking. So I just tried to stuff it and act like it didn't happen. I tried to move on. And the fact is that for any of us who've tried to just repress an incident or a part of our lives, we know that that just doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah. And so fortunately for me, later I did get, I found God, and that was a big part of my healing. I also really was encouraged strongly to get to school. And so I was able to get back in school, begin to get my education, which really helped with my self-esteem. I also eventually found a very good therapist who worked with me. She was actually the only one I had ever told about my trafficking. And I had been with other therapists before, but I didn't trust them. And she used something called EMDR, which is a wonderful form of therapy that really works with PTSD and trauma.
Yeah. One of the things that comes to mind is that, you had a relatively short period of time of being trafficked and you were still, a teenager during the time. How is it that you supported yourself? Because that's a lot of times how people get hooked in the lifestyle is that, they are so reliant on, they may be calling it their boyfriend, but in essence, it's their pimp. Who controls all the money. And so when you were able to, after the arrest, start rebuilding your life, how did you financially move through that?
Yeah, and I'll just say that I've never seen a woman who leaves a trafficking situation with money. A lot of people think that this is how a woman could get herself through college or buy a car or buy a house. That is a pipe dream that never happens. So I was very fortunate that I could go back to my father's house and stay there and get a straight job and begin to get my life back together. It was years before I went to school and found God and got therapy. And those are critical elements, I think, to healing. And that is a very big part of what we do at Generate Hope. Those are the key elements. We provide housing. And we provide psychotherapy. We provide medical, dental, physical treatments for the women, tattoo removal, because many of them are branded. So I didn't have those things when I was coming out, but I did have some other resources that I was able to make use of.
Yes. Talk a little bit about how faith really helped you through this process.
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example. So, about 2 weeks after I was at my father's house, um, he called, and my father gave me the phone, and
And did your father know what happened?
he did. He had to pick me up from the police station. Very shameful situation to be in. He didn't say a word to me about it. He just was a very passive kind of a person. He wasn't abusive. He was very loving, but just not one to step up to the plate when I needed it. So I was able to pray when that call came. And I really was a doormat. I just had no self-esteem. So the fact that I was able to say something to him, I think was a miracle. He was telling me how much he loved me and how he thought we had something special. And it just came to me, and I just said, I don't, and hung up the phone. And
Good for you.
yeah, but I'm telling you, I didn't have that wherewithal or the self-esteem to do that on my own.
Right.
And, later, just the healing of a relationship with God was so important because, as I say, coming out, there's so much shame that's wrapped up with, what has happened, and we blame ourselves. So, just being able to know that God loves me just the way I am,
Yeah.
having been trafficked or not.
Right.
And that's not something that he wanted for me, and he had better for me. So that faith aspect has been very important, not only in my own healing, but also in my work with other women. And I certainly don't hit them over the head with the Bible or anything like that. It's something that's available if they want it.
Right. It's a resource.
Right.
Yeah.
Like any other resource. We are physically, emotionally, spiritually damaged when we come out, and or harmed, if perhaps a softer word for that. And so we need healing in all those areas. And I just mentioned the sample of the services that we provide for women, physically and emotionally. And I think that that spiritual piece is very important as well. And so do the women who come through, for the most part, who come through Generate Hope.
Right, definitely. I agree. I think the faith aspect is so important. In fact, the verse that came to mind when you were speaking was, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Right. And, just the energy on that call, that it has to be bigger than us. Right. And I think that, anyone who moves through any type of traumatic experience, I think has an exploration of, yes, there's a part of why me, but I think there's also like, what's the bigger picture? Like, what has this experience allowed me now to understand, to allow me to serve in a different way, to have part of a bigger purpose? And I'm sure a lot of the women who go through, Generate Hope, have a level of trust and comfort knowing that you're someone who knows what they're talking about, that they don't feel, alone, that they actually feel safe, not only in the environment, but with you personally and what you've done. So I want to just thank you personally for, opening up yourself to share your story, not only with the women, but with our audience here, because people have things that they may label as shameful or they don't want anyone to know about, and they hide from those things.
Right.
And the fact that you're sharing it so that it has impact on others is a very special gift.
Thank you. It took me a long time. I really held that under wraps because I just believed that I was going to be judged and labeled.
Right.
And when I did begin to share that, I found that that wasn't true at all. And and I have found in working with other trafficked women that it is so important with the healing process. And I have to say, it does give me a bridge to the women, and they do trust me to a certain extent. But my behaviors also have to be such that that trust continues.
Right.
And we, make a point of working with the women for the most part, as individuals who have ideas about their healing and what would be important for them as well. We do have a set program and 5 phases and a rubric that we go by, but we also take each woman's individual situation into consideration.
Yeah, definitely. As a side note, one of the things I always like to ask the guests on the show is, because you and I have talked a lot about intentional, like having intentional living. And one of the things I always like to ask is the environment that we create, either allows us to feel safe or inspired or creative. We have different experiences in our bedroom versus our office or our kitchen. So what's your favorite room in your home and why?
I think it's my living room. And I just love the feel there. I do a lot of work there. I do my relaxing there. I have a dog who is just, my companion and my little sweetheart. And she's a big part of keeping me healthy as well. So yeah, I think that's my favorite room.
Nice. I love that. You have a phrase in your program about ending the game. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that is actually a program that we use. It's a group program. And so we run this, it runs for about 10 weeks. It could be a little bit longer, just depending on, how much time the women need to spend on each subject. But it is a way of really helping the women to come out of that whole mindset of the life or the game. Because remember, they've been brainwashed. There's,
Right.
That trauma bonding and Stockholm syndrome. So I noticed when we first started using ending the game in our program, which was early on, that the women were getting it a lot sooner. And by getting it, I mean that they come to us and they believe it was their fault and that they made poor choices. It's very hard for them to put the blame on their trafficker, especially if they were boyfriended in. And
Right.
there's still that connection for a while. And so this group, ending the game, really helps them to get it sooner. And it helps them to learn that you were victimized. And I really believe that the majority of traffickers are sociopaths. And that may not be what other people want to hear, but somebody who could do these horrendous things to another person and not have a conscience about it, not feel any amount of shame themselves, and just continue to do it over and over and over again with other women just for money,
Yeah.
Just as a therapist, I can't categorize them, in any other way.
Right.
And I hope that there's somebody out there who are working with the traffickers, because I think that they typically come from abusive backgrounds as well, gang backgrounds and all. But I think that needs to be a male who is stepping up to that plate.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, and what do you think about there seems to be a bit of glamorization of the life in, songs and, media, movies in general. I mean, we've heard the, pimps and hoes, and, you're hearing now for, a first time of girls going like, I want to be a porn star, or I'm going to be a sensation online, or just they'll say some of these things because of the glamorization that's happening around that. Are you seeing some of that?
Absolutely. And one of the places I see it a lot is in music videos, and the way women are portrayed and displayed it does really glamorize the idea of being trafficked or a porn star. And I can tell you, I've known porn stars, and what they say, or former porn stars, is that it is a horrendous way to live,
Right.
and that those scenes are horrible to live through. But again, I think that there's that grooming and the glamorization, like you say, that can take women into working in a strip club, the porn industry, or being trafficked. And it is no way to live. It's just horrible. If you think about having, sex with strangers and a quota that you have to live up to, maybe 10 or more men a night. And think about that for a 15-year-old.
Right.
And you have to bring that money in. And if you don't, there's a beating that's waiting for you. And so you meet your quotas.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's definitely a challenging lifestyle. And I just, I know you and I could talk for quite a long time around this. And I just know that I just appreciate your wisdom that you've brought here, the insight. I know people are going to want to connect with you. They're going to want to have the resources because, when you know better, you can do better. And when people can know where to go and what to do, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, well, again, they can go on the Generate Hope website. We have a way to email there. You can email me directly at susan@generatehope.org. Just reach out. If there's, a program in your area, try reaching out to them as well. There are a lot of people who go out and work in the strip clubs and on the streets and things to try and help women get out. That's not something we do, so the police have asked us not to. I remember them telling us that there was an undercover female officer, and a group came up talking to her about getting out of life. So we want to avoid these situations. So we kind of leave that to the police or law enforcement. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. From someone who works some of those assignments, it can be precarious when you've got people working different angles on the same thing. So, but all well-meaning as well. So that's a good thing. So, Susan, sorry?
Boundaries.
Yes, boundaries.
Boundaries.
Definitely. So, Susan, staying in line with our theme this year, as far as how are you creating freedom in your life for yourself and others?
Yeah, I think that for me, it's continuing my healing process, and so I think that in some ways, having been trafficked can stick with you for a long time. I rarely get triggered anymore. But, just the work that I do sometimes means that I need to go back and get a little tune up with my therapist.
Yeah.
It means I need to have a good team around me so that we can process things that are happening and just kind of support, each other. And I went off on a tangent and forgot the question.
It was how you're creating freedom.
Oh, yes, of course. So, and working with other agencies that are also fighting exploitation. And then, it means a lot to me to be able to do this work and to help other survivors, victims of sex trafficking. It is a joy to just walk alongside them, have conversations with them, sit down and eat with them, just kind of the regular things, of life, and just watch them grow and blossom. And I think into the women that they were originally meant to be. Yeah.
So beautiful. Well, thank you again, Susan, for sharing your wisdom and being here with us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate you shining the light on this dark subject.
My pleasure. Thank you. And to our listeners out there, if you yourself are in a potentially, you may not call it trafficking, you may be in an unhealthy boyfriend relationship, things may not be going well for you at home, re-listen to this, reach out to somebody in your area, even if it's to, a trusted friend. Don't be alone in this place. That isolation is what kind of keeps you trapped in those things. So reach out for help. There are many different avenues today to be able to do that. And so I invite you to do that. If that's not you, then please share this, get this out to other people so that they know what the resources are, because the more that we know what's actually going on, the more people that we can help. And as a society and a community, we can make those changes. So until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now.